So my IOP is about trauma in relationships and symbolism in Stand By Me and the Shawshank Redemption. So trauma is defined as an injury or an emotional or psychological damage done to a person. In the movie The Shawshank Redemption, the trauma all the characters go through together is that they're all in prison, which is and they all did something to get to prison, which can be traumatic and have an emotional toll. And in Stand By Me, all the boys go through trauma by seeing a dead body when they're like 10, so that can be stressful for a person. In the film Stand By Me and The Shawshank Redemption, literary elements such as symbolism and narrative elements such as conflict and character are developed through film techniques such as angle shots and perceived distance to create first an effect of companionship, followed by isolation. This reveals the universal truth that while trauma provides temporary bonds between the affected people, it ultimately isolates people. In Stand By Me, one of the main themes of the whole movie is how the four boys grow closer together throughout their journey to find the body. To show this, there's a lot of character development and symbolism with the train that they almost get hit by a few times and the gun that Gordy and Chris have. They also use angle shots to show the relationship growing stronger. So in the movie, there are two train scenes. The first one is towards the beginning, when Teddy is standing on the tracks and Chris has to pull him off and then they fight. The second one is later when they're on the bridge and the train starts chasing the four boys. So between these two scenes, we see a contrast because in the first scene, Teddy is left until the last second and Chris has to pull him off, where it's then Gordy and Chris versus Vern and Teddy, and they kind of fight it out about Teddy being stupid, I guess. But in the second train scene, it's all of them are in danger together, and there's a shot where it's Gordy and Vern running towards the camera with the train behind them, which kind of changes up the previously set partnerships where it was very much Gordy and Chris and then Vern and Teddy. But here we see they're all stuck in this together and they're all working together to get to safety. Another point that shows their relationship is the gun as a symbol, because when we first see the gun, it's just Chris and Gordy behind a store, in the alley place somewhere, where Gordy accidentally shoots the gun at a trash can and gets mad at Chris. But later we see Gordy knowing that a gun is loaded and is a lethal weapon, using the gun to protect both Chris and the body against Ace when he has the knife. So we see this development of the gun going from something that they were just toying around with behind this building, as opposed to something that Gordy realizes, he has to do to protect his best friend. We also see the theme of friends replacing family throughout Stand By Me. An example of this is towards the end when Gordy is crying to Chris, and Chris says, "I wish I was your father, because then I could be the one to tell you that you can do it," or something along those lines, because Gordy feels Gordy's lacking that parental figure in his life, that fatherly figure in his life, and Chris has the responsibility to step up and do that. We also see on the more positive side, Gordy telling all the boys a bedtime story when they're at the camp, not a bedtime story, but a story when they're at the campfire. So, which is typically something a parent would do to a smaller child. But here we see Gordy telling all the other boys a story to cheer them up or engage them kind of into the situation. So, on the other hand, in Shawshank Redemption, we see symbolism in the rock hammer, and perceived distance is used to show relationships grow stronger. The most obvious example of this is Red and Andy's relationship. From the very beginning, we see that connection begin to form because Red says how he has a feeling about Andy when they're placing bets on fresh fish? When they're placing bets on them. Whoa. Okay. So we see that connection form very early. The boys in both movies work to hold on to what they have as for a sense of familiarity, as everything around them is changing due to the trauma. So we see this in how the boys are always standing in one line, and also how in Stand By Me and how in The Shawshank Redemption they always sat in the same place in the cafeteria. And I'm out of time. Let's stop now.
Excellent. Well done.